Fields of Platea, Parts 1 to 2. Written by OK Significance, 1752. Chapter 1. You'll be home before the leaves have fallen from the trees. I watched as the army returned from the war. I was a simple child then. Humanity had won the war, yet the men who came back looked broken. Some had no arms, some had no eyes, others looked depressed. Many seemed like they had seen unspeakable horrors. These men were different from all the other human soldiers. Old Terran soldiers came back victoriously happy. They bragged and told tales of how they had shattered the Dracos Empire. These men were broken. I was confused. Never before had I seen a Terran so low. They had won. We had won. Why did these specific Terrans look depressed? My mother whispered to my father, "They must have come from Platea." My father's face went white. Whispers echoed among the crowd, who had come to see the human soldiers. I asked father, "What is so terrible about Platea?" He responded, his face still white. "They spent 33 years under the sun." He then took me and mother home. I never understood what he meant until I was much older. 34 years earlier, Earth. "It is war!" shouted our principal. "Those damn lizards couldn't keep their hands off another planet and invaded the innocent Sarlaccs. Gather around me, students." I watched as my friends, Henry, Philip, Hans, and my French friend, Raphael, gathered around, along with the thousands of other students in the auditorium. "You are all of age. Some of you have Sarlacc friends. Are we gonna let Dracos invade them?" the principal yelled. "No!" we all responded. "The president of our proud nation, the USA, has called for the UN to do something about this. And they have. This is your chance to prove your worth. All males from 16 to 45 are allowed to join this campaign of liberation and freedom. So, what are you waiting for? Go on, my sons, fight for what is right, for the president, for humanity, for freedom," he yelled. We yelled back his cry. It had happened all of a sudden. We were at war. "Come on, let's get a beer and drink like there is no tomorrow," said Hans excitedly. "That doesn't sound like a bad idea. You up for it, guys?" I chirped in. "Hell yeah," said the others. School had been cancelled earlier because of the news of the war we had gotten into. "What do you think these lizard men look like?" asked Raphael, as he struggled a little in pronouncing what he was saying in proper English. "Maybe like the lizard men from D&D. You know, I'm sure you've seen some of them in the D&D manuals," responded Henry. "Yes, I have, but they are aliens, so I doubt they'll look like the stereotypical lizard people," I said. "I wonder if the women are hot," said Philip. He looked like he had spent much time thinking of this. "You want to shag a lizard?" said Raphael, in much disgust and amusement. "Of course not," said Philip. "I was just wondering." We continued to chat. Most of it was banter until Hans brought up something. "Raphael, what's going to happen to Sarah? You've been dating her since 10th grade, and now we are going off to the recruitment centre. You think she'll be okay with this?" Raphael seemed to stop and go into deep thought. I elbowed Hans lightly. "You had to bring it up. You really want to worry him? We are having such a good time. You should have brought that up much later," I said, annoyed. "Lay off, Hans. It is a valid concern," Henry said. Raphael seemed to still be in much thought about what Hans had asked him, which put us in a sour mood. "Don't think too much about this, man. We'll get through it in one piece, like we always have," said Philip, trying to make Raphael not think too deeply about it. "I guess you're right," sighs Raphael. "You know, the bar is just around the corner. Want to?" I say. "Yes, why not?" says Raphael. "That's the spirit. Now let's get wasted," says Henry eagerly. We walked off to the bar to get wasted. Dracos Lang. Me and my parents walked to the centre square. The tall trees with their burrows and tree houses surrounded us and the crowd. The Emperor himself stood on the balcony of the royal palace. "My citizens, I have grave news," he said, his voice booming. I saw my two friends, Nathon and Tanmal, among those in the crowd. "The foolish Terran have declared war on our mighty empire for our justified invasion of the Sarlaccs. Knowing this, we will destroy every single Terran. Every man, 14 to 80, steps up." I had no choice but to step up. My dad and my friends followed suit. Around 4/5 of the crowd had stepped forward. "You are all now soldiers of our proud empire. You will be home before the leaves have fallen from the trees. I promise you that," said the Emperor proudly. Something about his voice and him saying this was reassuring. Hovercraft and trains full of uniforms and gear rolled up. I, along with my friends and Dad, were tossed uniforms, a backpack with proper supplies and food, and our guns. A man, I assume was a general, inspected each of us. He walked to my dad. "You look like a good fit for the space fleet." He then turned to me. "You'll do fine in the army, boy," he said, his scales turning the bluish colour. "Can't I go with my father?" I asked, tugging on my father's arm. "No, we all have special purposes. You should be happy you'll get to kill your first human, most likely," said the general, handing me a knife. "This is a fire knife. It can cut through steel like butter. It's yours," said the general sweetly. "Now do your duty for the Emperor and make him proud." I looked up at the general as he said this. My father shot me a "don't worry, I'll be okay" look. Trusting him, I boarded the nearby hover train along with several others. I saw my father board a different one. That was the last time I saw my father. Earth. I woke up. I felt awful. Me and my friends had had a night of hard drinking before we had gone our separate ways. I grabbed my phone and shot my friends a quick text, asking when we should meet at the recruitment centre. Henry texted me back that he and Hans were already there and were waiting for the rest of us. I grabbed my coat and got on my clothes fast. I looked out the window and could see the snow. I knew those lizard men wouldn't last a winter here. I said goodbye to my parents without telling them where I was going. They would have disapproved. By the time I had gotten to the recruitment centre, everyone but Raphael was there. "Where's Raphael?" I asked. "Probably discussing with his girlfriend if he should join us in volunteering for the war," responded Philip. "Let's hope it doesn't take long. We can't wait in the cold forever," Anne said. 5 minutes later, we saw Raphael stumbling towards us, trying not to get knee-deep in snow. "What did she say?" I asked. "We talked, and she's okay with me going, as long as I make it in one piece." "Which I will, of course," he bragged. "Good to hear, buddy. Those lizard men have nothing on us humans," said Henry. "He's right. I bet they haven't seen a single race that has the stubbornness we do," They'll be scattering once we enter the fray, I say confidently. Correct, as always, joked Hans. Now, which branch of our military should we join? Army, we all said in unison. Okay, whoever kills the first lizard man gets $500, says Philip. Game on, I say. We enter the recruitment centre for our first taste of glory. Those lizards will never be able to face humanity, I thought. This will be our chance to prove ourselves and show what humanity is made of. We will make our families and humanity proud. Chapter 2. When the drum roll started on that day. 2068. Dracos Empire War Council. The Terran declaration of war had been unexpected, but the War Council of Dracos Imperium had already had a plan in case the humans were bold enough to declare war on the Empire. So, are we to stick with our original plan for the Terrans, or are we to switch up our strategy? Asked General Valerium. Plan stays the same. Platea will be the main target of our offensive against the humans, though we will have to divide more resources to counter the human offensives in our sector, responded Commander Claw, the Commander-in-Chief of the Dracos Army and Space Fleet. Still, if we are to attack Platea, it will be a risky gamble, said one of the generals. Well, that is where our space fleet comes in. The humans have relatively been copying the ship designs of those used by the Galactic Council. We have learned how to properly deal with the Council ships, said Claw, in a confident manner. What about numbers? Humans made like the Snarkonics. They most definitely start to outnumber us if the war drags on, said Valerium. Which is why we will crush them swiftly and fast if we don't. We double down on Platea. We shall bleed the humans to death on that planet, whether we succeed or not, said Claw, as her scales turned red. But that's the worst case scenario. Planet shall be captured swiftly. If Platea falls, the gateway to the Terran home system is open, she continued. It is also a relatively historic site. That is the first planet outside their solar system they colonized, and was where the current Terran president was born. The generals listened intently. Then General Ractong spoke up. What about the many forts on the planet, and how will we hide our attack on it? He asked. Quite easy. We launch small offences onto Terran planets directly bordering our side of space. These attacks will also stretch human manpower thin. She spoke with renewed confidence. Terrans may have a president, but are currently still divided among their subgroups they call countries. This may end up being easier depending how disunited Terra is. The other generals nod in agreement. What shall the date of this offensive be? Asked one of the generals. Oh, it shall be the 11th day of the Turtles' passing in the year 4356, or February 21st, 2069, in human time, she said calmly. The council then disbanded to organise the army for the grand offensive. Platea, 12th of February, 2069. To my disappointment, I had been separated from most of my friends. We hadn't gotten to see any glory yet, and had been left on this quiet planet named Platea. I could see Fort Lincoln in the distance. It was certainly an impressive sight. It was humanity's largest and strongest fort, and being stationed within eyesight of it was quite an honour. Based on what I knew, Hans and Raphael were stationed in Fort Pertain. Probably it was an honour for Raphael to be stationed in a fort named after a national hero of his country. Henry was in an area called the Fish Hook. The Fish Hook was a forest that was shaped like a fish hook. It was a relatively nice forest. Alien planets had always been fascinating. Some of the trees in that forest glowed a purple colour in the dark. One thing I hate about this planet is the overly complicated trench and defence systems we have. The trench lines are a maze, and it took me 4 hours to get to my post. One thing that unnerved me a lot was the lack of manpower we had on the planet. I expected this place to be packed with soldiers, but it really wasn't. It wasn't common for me to run into an empty anti-ship battery or a machine gun bunker. Humanity's strongest force only had 6,000 men manning it, not the required 20,000 based on what I remember from history class. The food was good at least. We ate like kings. The trenches were also surprisingly clean and weren't what you'd expect from your typical trench. 5 days ago, General Ney had gone to inspect the planet. He didn't seem pleased. Maybe it was because we hadn't been working on the defences or lack of manpower on the planet. There was heavy fighting on the edge of humanity's area of control. We had made some progress, I had read on the news, though I had been upset and my friends hadn't been there to teach those lizards a lesson. "Hey, I got us some rations and some cake," said Philip, appearing out of one of the tunnels that leads to me and my crew's battery. "Oh, thanks," I said as I grabbed a ration and a slice of cake. "Hey, what do you miss now that we are at war?" I asked him. "I miss women. It sucks trying to get a date with one of the female soldiers," whines Philip. "I miss having a bed all to myself. It sucks sleeping in a trench or in one of the beds in the barracks, since there is always a guy above you or below you." "I get it too, man," said Philip. "Hey, Wallace," said Philip. "What?" I asked. "How long do you think this war will last? I know we haven't seen any action, but I hope the war lasts long enough for us to see some action at least," he said, tired. "Hey, I bet we'll get to see enough action for us to come back to Earth as heroes," I said reassuringly. "You think one of us might die?" he asked worriedly. "No, of course not. Do you see where we are? I doubt those lizards will even get close to where we are," I say optimistically. "Yeah, I guess you're right about that," said Philip. "Who knows, maybe this whole thing will last just a year or two and we'll be home by next Christmas," said Philip, joking. February 21st, 2069, or 4356 Dracos time. I saw as our prow fleet sailed near the planet. I like our uniforms. I was a regular soldier, so I got a standard green uniform with a leather cap and a plasma ammo belt along with 5 plasma grenades. Me and the others watched and cheered as our fleet began to plummet the planet. The planet's shield shattered and laser after laser hit the planet. The drum roll started today. It must have been heard from 100 light years away due to how powerful it was. 1 billion laser and plasma beams hit the planet, yet those damn human forts were standing strong. Though by this point, the battle has begun, so there's no turning back. I saw our shock troops and the Nargensent move into the landing pods. Their heavy sergeant, plated armour, and sergeant helmets shined as they entered the pods and were dropped down. After waiting what felt like centuries, me and my battalion were signalled to enter into our landing vessel to be shipped down to the landing zone. I entered our landing vessel, and after some time my battalion was all loaded onto the vessel and it began to fly down to the planet's surface. The trip to the planet's surface was quicker than expected, and it seemed like most human anti-ship batteries had been knocked out. Once we landed, I rushed out. I saw thousands of craters and fires everywhere. A once beautiful landscape turned into a nightmare by our bombardment. My battalion walked over the ruined human trenches and over their dead and dying. Some had been mutilated beyond belief, their flimsy arms ripped to shreds, their guts scattered around the floor in a bloody orgy. I tried to stop myself from throwing up. My battalion, after some walking, met up with the shock troopers, who seemed to have cleared out the remaining resistance in the sector. Our Grand Lizard had received orders from High Command to go assist in the assault in a forest the humans had codenamed the Fishhook. Me and my battalion began our march over there, through this hellscape. Fishhook, Platea 21st, 2069. I laid flat on my belly as laser beam after laser beam hit our positions. I could literally smell the forest burning. I looked up and saw an unlucky chap get shredded by the bombardment. God, I hope my friends are okay and alive. It then all stopped. My ears were ringing. I poked my head out of the mess our trench had become and saw the lizards for the first time. They wore some sort of plate armour and were throwing grenades into our trenches and slaughtering our guys. I grabbed a rifle off a dead man and fired at the advancing lizard men. Most of my bullets bounced off their armour until I got a lucky shot and a bullet went through a lizard man's eyes and brought him to his knees. Some of my dazed and confused comrades that were alive began to get up and fire away. The forest had been turned into a dreadful inferno. The trees burned. I saw one of my fellow comrades screaming as he was being burned alive in the forest. I rushed to our destroyed machine gun bunker and found our machine gun and began to fire it, mowing down scores of those lizards. I saw them jumping into the trenches on my left and I grabbed the closest thing to me, which was a digging shovel. I then rushed out to the nest as a grenade was thrown my way. I rolled on the floor as it exploded. Then one of them jumped into the trench I was in and tried to hit me with his claws. I dodged his attack and punched him in the face and thrusted my shovel into his neck, killing him. I then saw more enter and I grabbed the dead lizard's grenades and threw them wildly as they exploded all around. I saw some of my own comrades be taken on by my reckless throwing, but I also took out some of the lizards. I then ran like a man possessed out of the trench into the advancing lizards. "I'm still alive, you fucking amateurs!" I yelled as I began to bash the lizard's brains in with my shovel. I fought for what seemed like hours, hacking and slashing at them, until I heard a bang and saw a gaping hole in my stomach. "It hurts!" I cried, and I slowly felt myself collapsing. I cried as I lay on the ground. I didn't want to go like this. God no. I didn't want to die in this inferno. I heard one of my comrades screaming for his mom. I crawled over to him. Me and him held on to each other, for each other. I saw the lizard men walking past us, not even wanting to help us. I felt his body grow colder, and it slowly went black for me. That's how we died.